Hello and welcome to Seddon Laceys Comic Stash, and we are back with some Hawkeye loving, where we will be going over the Hawkeye run from 2012.
Years.
Yes, I should have had that written down.
No, I
Terrible.
think it's 2012 to 2015. I think it actually. I think it snuck into 2015 though on release dates.
So yeah, we did a whole sort of more blow by blow of the first trade, which is back
And I
in the
will put it
archives.
kind of up there or somewhere in the ether. I'll put a link to that. Yeah, we looked at the kind of My Life is a Weapon one, didn't we? And
Yeah,
we talked specifically about that and did quite a bit of comparison
it was
with
around the
our
time
thoughts
the
and
TV came out.
yeah, our thoughts and feelings on that comparatively to the TV. And I'm sure when we talk about it later, we'll probably touch again on a couple of the beats from My Life as a Weapon. And I'm sure we'll touch lightly on the TV. But this is much more so because you've recently finished the whole kit and caboodle, haven't you? And this
Yeah.
is my second stroke third go round on it. Yeah, and I really wanted to kind of have a show about it because spoilers, I love it, and I kind of wanted to hear what you thought about it. But we don't do that bit yet, do we?
No.
No, no.
What do we always do first? We get on. We
Go
get
for a wee
reading
wee.
corners.
Oh, reading corner. Yes, it not
You
go for
do
a wee
the
wee.
wee wee beforehand.
Okay, I did that. I promise.
So
Let's
get
get
in the
into our
corners.
reading corner.
Happiness is just around the corner.
Oh, I did. Did I tell you my mum really likes the Avenger boys? I did send that message
did.
to you, didn't I? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
She was loving it. Absolutely loving it. Anywho, enough about my mother and her obsession with the Avenger boys. What have you been reading in your reading corner?
So I have one that I'm going to touch on really quickly because I know that you're reading it as well,
Oh,
and I think because of how much I'm loving it, we're going to do the whole thing when we get to the end of it, which is White Knight.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I have done the Harley run and also the Beyond White Knight, which is the next run after
And that's the
Harley.
one I haven't even started yet. I've done the Harley run like you, and yeah, I think we probably will do a show in its entirety because I think it's fair to say through all of these, we have definitely enjoyed all of them. Some more than others, but I think yeah, we'll probably do a kind of White Knight special. But yeah, I haven't started the. I'm going to say the last one, but the latest one. So I doubt it's the last one. In fact, I know it isn't. I've seen some news about what's coming next,
Yes.
but but yeah, I'll say I'll commit at least to I bloody love the Harley one.
Yes. But what I will talk about is following up from something I mentioned a few weeks ago, the Century and the
Oh
spin-off
yes,
from that first Century run. So the Hulk, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and versus the Void. Because obviously when I last spoke about the Century and when I first read it, I was like, how could they leave it like this? Where,
how dare they do this to me? Yeah,
they're
yeah,
just about to go on the fight and there's nothing.
yeah.
And then realised that they do finish it off with 5 different issues that all came out in the same month, but they're just not called the Century. You had to find them differently on
They're
there.
all kind of the Century Hulk, Century X-Men, aren't they? So they're all kind
Yeah.
of prefixed with the Century, but it's well, I was going to say it's them and a superhero team or a character, but the final one's Century Void, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I guess there's a bit of a lie. It's not all crossovers with them and another superhero.
But yeah, so I did get my payoff of the fight and the story finishing. Fuck me, it's so good.
It's good, isn't it? It's really good. And I'm glad you read it, and I'm glad you reminded me because I think I'd actually forgotten how good it was.
Yeah, and again because again obviously with the first run, um, there was a few bits where it'd be semi-character related to the other guys that are in the story because they'd meet up with Reed or they'd meet up with Spider-Man, and there's that little bit. But the spin-off, I'm calling them spin-offs, but the final parts have much more of what that character had to do with Century previously that they'd forgotten but now remember. because obviously just at the end of the initial Century run, the mind melt that has been done that everyone forgets
Yeah.
about him is gone, and they all sort of go, well, oh, this is how Spider-Man had that picture of Sentry that made him huge, or the history of him and Reed and the rest of the Fantastic Four, him with Angel of the X-Men, and sort of how he made Angel believe in himself and
Yeah.
become who he is, and how Banner and Hulk love him so much. And yeah, oh, so good.
Like I said to you, like a character, and I know we talked about this when we did it last time, but someone that you kind of went, oh, like they exist, and I went, no, they didn't. But they do such a grand job, and like, I guess a whole big part of the premise is integrating this character that has never existed before and insinuating it throughout the history of the Marvel universe. And what a cracking job they did! And they do it by telling stories where
Yep.
you see his interactions, but he actually kind of the positive and in some cases, I guess, negative impacts he had on the world around him, and to a large part, I think it increases not only how much you care about him, but you care. It makes the stakes that much higher because you
Yeah.
look and you suddenly see, without knowing, this is how much he contributed to the world, and I don't want to lose him from the world again, or from a reader's perspective, I don't want to lose him from something I can read about ever again.
Yeah, and again, they in the spin-off ones, because again they sort of aged them to where they would have been in that story as well. They aged the art as so well in it again, because as I said, that was the thing when I first read the first lot, and I was like, so who's this guy? Why have I never seen him before? Because the art that they use in certain bits of it is perfect throwback
Yeah.
to stuff from the 60s and 70s that you just like, well, they're just reprinting like old stories. But to find out it was all new, and I was like, chef's kiss, amazing. And
And you get that grounding, don't you, of his interactions with his wife and his interactions with is it Billy, the guy who was his sidekick, and I don't know, it just, we're gonna get onto more of this later, I promise, when we get to Hawkeye, but it just feels real, but in a massively fantastical setting, and I don't know. You just, I found that it made me care about a character I'd never seen before or heard of before very, very quickly. And that's not just caring turn the page, what happens, what's the mystery behind it. That the mystery behind everything, I also think they deliver fantastically. But the thing I remember more than anything else is, I guess my liking of Robert Reynolds, but also my kind of feeling that anguish and pain of what he went through. I mean, so much of it is around, is any of this real?
yeah,
And I don't know, just maybe those sort of stories just resonate with me. But yeah, I think this is fantastic.
it's one of those of, I've got the rest of them saved on the iPad, and I will definitely be jumping back into that next Century run. I think it was like about 6 or 7 years later they did another run, so that's next on the Marvel list. To jump back into that.
You might, and again, this is something that if I'd have remembered that you'd read this, I'd have done a bit of prep. You might want to take a diversion before you go back to that second volume. I can't remember, and I'll check, and I'll let you know after the show.
Yeah.
But I think you might want to go to the Avengers next, and then maybe come back for the second volume. So I think the second volume may come after he starts to appear somewhere else. The Avengers, yeah. But I will check. I just can't remember publication wise where it lands. But let's just say he gets. I think I mentioned it before. He gets further integrated into the Marvel universe, and there are reasons why, etc., etc., etc. And I think it'll be interesting to see how you feel about what they ultimately do with him.
Yes, it's so in fact, as we all know, I'm pretty much a DC fanboy, and most of the stuff I read is DC. This is the one that's getting me all a little bit Marvel giddy. This
Yeah.
is the Century.
Yeah, and I can see why. I think He almost feels like he could be a DC character, doesn't he?
A bit.
Like, yeah. And also, as a strong recommend, if you liked this, which you're saying you did, you really, 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 really need to read Miracle Man or Marvel Man, depending on whatever the title is over
Yeah.
at the time. But the Alan Moore, and I know you've expressed an interest because I know that obviously Neil Gaiman's come back to finish off his part of the story. But yeah, I think if you like this, as great as I think this is, it pales in comparison to Alan Moore's work on Miracle Man. And I say there's some similarities. I just think there are. You know, I think this doesn't exist without Alan Moore's run on that. I think there are lots of nods, and I don't necessarily mean with exactly how the story goes, but kind of the idea of Robert Reynolds and what Robert Reynolds is, and the, you know, yeah, you need to read that run.
Yeah. Well, we all know that I love the comic wizard, so always going to read more of his stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Anything else other than the Century?
That has been it, really. Other than the one thing that we'll be doing in a few weeks, but I've only done the first two.
Oh yeah,
of it,
the thing
so,
we don't talk about.
Yeah.
The secret. It's not a secret. I've laid that up now, haven't I? I've made it sound like we're going to do something exciting. Set your expectations low. But yeah,
we're,
it's something
we're
gonna do now.
finishing something.
We're finishing something we started 18 months ago.
Yes.
Wow. Longest read ever. But at least it's on the radar to finish it. For me, I'm going to do a quick hit because I do want to do a show about this down the line. But I know I've banged on to you about it, and I know you've added to your list of something to write, to read, to pick up and read. But it is The Department of Truth, which is James Tynion IV. We go nuts about him when we talk about A Nice House on the Lake. We have an episode of that on the channel, and it made me want to read more. And I know he's done a lot of DC stuff. He's done like a run on Batman, etc., etc. But seeing what he did on A Nice House on the Lake, I think I kind of, by design, wanted my next thing to read was going to be something outside of the superhero fare. I'd heard things about this. I'd heard it was good. I'd bought it ages ago. It was sat on the shelf. And I won't go too far into it, but I loved this. I read the first volume, which is called The End of the World. This has conspiracy theories, flat Earth, JFK assassination, lizard people, secret organizations. Martin Simmons does the art, and it is wonderful. It marries up with what the story's doing so well, and it is quite a jarring art style. Like, certainly if you come into this just straight up from generic superhero art, I think you go, whoa, this is very different, because it is very different, but it just sits so snugly and perfectly. And I love a conspiracy theory at the best of times. I love a secret government agency. This is absolutely really smart as well. The third issue is right up there in my single issues list. Now, that's a very long list because there's been so many great single issues, but I kind of want to leave it there because I want to come back and talk about it more with you at a later date, either when you've done this, or potentially if you like it as much as I do, maybe we get a few volumes under the belt and we do it. But for anyone who hasn't read it, we will be coming back to this, and if you haven't read it, buy it, read it. It's amazing.
And so it is in the Amazon list to get at some point when I need to, bump up an order to get free shipping. Because that's when I usually end up buying stuff. Is like, oh, I'm £6 short of some free shipping.
They are nice, aren't they? They're nice little bumpings, aren't they?
That's there. That's like £6, £7, £8 that I can just go. Oh, that's accidentally fallen into the basket. Oh,
yeah, look for a trade paperback or a manga or something like that. And quite often it will be. I'd love to say that it was music, but because I buy most of my music on vinyl now, that's bumping it up to double the price. So I'm not doing that. But yeah, no, they are really handy, aren't they? To kind of go, yep, this will get my basket to the price point that I need it to be.
Exactly. Anything else?
No. I have been reading some bits and bobs along the way, but sometimes when you want to go, this thing's bloody brilliant, so let's singly just talk about that. Department of Truth, buy it, read it. Have I said that before? Buy it, read it. Have I said that before? Buy it, read it.
Are you telling me that I need to
Look, that's to you and anyone watching.
buy
it and read it. Yeah, read it. Or steal it, read it. Like I'm not precious. Yeah.
So, shall we get into the meat of the matter?
Mr. Hawkeye. Well,
Yes.
I guess there's a bit of a lie there straight away, isn't it? Because it's not just Mr. Hawkeye, is it?
No, it is also Mrs. Hawkeye.
It's Hawkeyes.
Yes.
Is that how you pluralize a Hawkeye? Yeah, so as we said, 2012 to 2015, Matt Fraction written, and predominantly David Aja on pencils, although there are some guest appearances. There are some issues where other people come in and do art, but I would say as a piece, I think it's fair to say that this is their creation. And when I say their creation, one of the things that I was quite interested in, certainly at the time and subsequently, is to kind of find out a bit of the backstory around it. And this is one that David Aja really wanted to do. Matt Fraction initially didn't want to do it. He was like, kind of, no, I don't think it's for me. And not because of any like lack of desire towards the character. I think it was at the time it's a bit of a no, not for me. But David Aja was really keen on doing it, and they had previously or had been doing a run on Immortal Iron Fist together, which is also absolutely fantastic. And it kind of they come together to create. I'm going to be talking greatly about this all the time. What I think is a truly fantastic superhero run, and when I say a superhero run, let's go with a Marvel comic run in the superhero pantheon that does so many things that superhero comics don't normally do.
Yeah. This was obviously the original reason I picked up the first one was obviously the Hawkeye TV show was coming on. And you went, this is what it looking like it's going to be based on because of the bits that we've seen in the trailers and stuff. And I was like, all right, I'll jump on it and give it a go. And the first thing that grabbed me is the art style. The art style on this is so different to everything else, especially at the time as well.
I think you're spot on there. I think even more so for the time, isn't it? Because I think like naturally, like kind of indie comic creators have become more and more to the fore. The industry kind of changed, but also when something like this did well, people kind of jump on that bandwagon. But you're spot on. Comic, not many, if any, comics were doing anything like this at the time.
Because the thing is, it is what 8 colors. For most of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I know like I think generally like we do find it easier to talk about the writers, don't we? I think that's something that I guess we pick up on the writing more, and I think to a large part I've got zero talent in art. Not saying I've got talent in writing either, but I've got zero talent in art. So even sometimes talking about the artist feels a little bit different and difficult, and we kind of lean more into a bit of I like that, I don't like that. But we tend to talk about the pencilers. But again, go back in my time machine. I don't think I'd ever really noticed colorist before, but it's a guy called Matt Hollinsgsworth who does this whole series, and it is one of the really standout parts for me is the palette that they use and the limited palette they use, but how brilliantly they use that limited palette throughout. It is absolutely breathtaking, and it does nothing but add to the art and to the series rather than ever detracting from it.
And it's the thing, there are sometimes when the palette changes very sort of dramatically from one to another. Like later in the story, when we sort of go over a bit more of the story, like when Kate goes to LA.
Yep.
It goes from the dingy, dull colours to more primary, so more reds and oranges and yellows, because it's brighter and lighter there.
Yeah.
And then when obviously you go back to Clint being in New York, and it's back to the sort of the more sort of purples, blues, greens, browns,
greys are in there a lot, aren't they? Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's just it works so well to play with those colours in the way that they do.
But even that, when you said about going to like a more sunshiny place and the palette changes, but it still keeps it in that mode of going, we're still going to have kind of a range. It's not
Yeah.
like all of a sudden they're in LA and it's every color you could ever think of. They're brighter colors, but they'll still kind of, I'd say, use probably a range of 8 to 16 colors in its entirety to cover that whole part of the story.
Yeah. And the the character design is very sort of 60s, 70s, that
Yeah.
comic book strip that you would get on a paper.
Yeah.
You know, the sort of 3 or 4 block ones where it's not anything that's like, oh my god, look at how amazing they've drawn the superhero. It's functional designs. But because the story they're telling with it, you don't need anything massively elaborate. And if anything, it makes you like the characters more, because Hawkeye in this is an everyman. He isn't a massive mega superhero that's, you know, all powerful. And, you know, he is broken. He is deaf. He is terrible with everything. And he is, you know, struggling along with life.
Well, you
And
say
he's
about that
drawn
everyman
that way.
thing. I'd read I just for this, and I thought I'd get it up here just so I don't misquote stuff. I was like kind of reading some of the interviews back at the time, and when Matt Fraction was talking about him, he described him, and this was an interview on a comicosity, and he said he's just a guy, an extraordinarily decent one at that. I thought to use a normal guy as a lens through which to view the Marvel universe. And he said it wasn't anything he'd seen done before. And you know, you said about it there. He's an everyman, but he is a guy, and it allows you to see the world in a very different way. And obviously, we'll get more into the storytelling of that. But I think you're spot on how that mixes in with the art. Like quite often when you see him, he's injured. He's got a cast on. He's got plasters all over him. But even like the way he stands, he's not the buff hero, is he? You know, quite often he's slouched. He's wearing a t-shirt. He's wearing jogging bottoms. His hair's all over the place because he's not
got a
bothered
beer or
or
a
just got
coffee
out
on
of
the
bed.
go.
Yeah, but you know, the art all the way through is kind of what reinforces that. Because I think if you're selling him as the everyman and you're kind of going, oh yeah, he's just like you, but like it's Jim Lee drawing him and he's there like going, then yeah, it just wouldn't work. And you know, it always feels a bit silly sometimes saying the art and the story, the writing match, because in theory it should every time. I guess that's what people are aiming for. But I think because it's got a distinct storytelling lilt to it from the writing side, and because the art so reinforces that, or in some cases probably is the leading light of it, you don't. It's a bit of a shame because it almost makes you go, "Oh, I don't get this enough, do I?" Like, and it almost it sounds horrible, but it almost puts some stuff a bit more further down to the ordinary category because you're going, "Oh yeah, that thing I thought I really liked that I read last week wasn't anywhere near as good as this, was it?" But yeah, absolutely amazing art throughout this series. I always said season then.
And also, what I love, so I'll chug it in at this point. Yes, it's a storytelling beat that we'll use later on, but it's a way they do it with art. Is how they do Lucky and
So good.
his
Yep.
speech bubbles of just pictures,
Yep.
and the stuff when Clint's obviously lost his hearing and is deaf,
Yep.
and the sign language parts, or the bits where someone's talking to him and you can see the little pictures of what his brain is thinking and they're saying.
Yep.
Just
I wanted to almost like one of the things I wanted to do before we did the show was kind of go, here are the like 1, 5, 10 best things about this, or the 1, 5, 10 best issues of it. But a couple of those examples you gave there, I found it almost impossible because I just think throughout it, there's just some amazing things done that is that combination of I haven't seen anyone do this before in mainstream Marvel. I hadn't really seen people do much of it, or certainly all in one 22 issue kind of long series. And to further your ultimate, and I'm going to say story, but I think ultimately it's a look at these characters and there's kind of a story that goes along with it. But to use so many different and varied techniques along the way to keep it interesting, to show you something fresh, to show you some different sides of it, and yet that the sign language usage was, I think, a stroke of genius, because you're just sat there and you're going, I didn't. I want to premise this. I wanted to learn sign language after going through this issue. But yeah, I do want to premise it. I'm a lazy shit, so I didn't.
But yeah, it's one of the later issues. It's like near the back end where there's no words for like a whole
Yeah.
issue. It's just the pitching. 'Cause it's when, spoiler for later on, there's an explosion and Clint's completely deaf, and it's all about Clint for the whole issue, and it's you watching him working out what's going on by trying to lip read, trying to sort of work out what people are meaning, read half of conversation stuff. In any other book, you'd be like, well, they've just got no story of what they're doing. But they do so much without having to use words that it's just a genius level of storytelling. If the whole thing would have been like that, maybe a little bit too much, but because it's just a one issue thing, and the end of the issue before, and then he gets his sort of a slight bit hearing back by the end, you're just like, that's a brilliant thing. It would be like an issue of like watching an episode on telly, and you just have that one episode that just hits perfectly right for where they are in the story.
Comic book wise, and I think I'm not going to say it's the first one, but it's the first time I kind of remember it being, and it's certainly a revered one. Like a G.I. Joe comic did a silent issue. I think I'm not so great on my G.I. Joe knowledge, but I think it was Snake Eyes or like one of the ninja characters, and it's revered, and you see a lot along the way, or not a lot, every now and again someone kind of comes along and goes, I'm going to do my silent issue. I'm pretty sure there's been a number of them for Wolverine characters like that. And so I think like kind of that as an idea is something that is done in comics, but again, never done like this. You know, like normally it is to show like your ninjas having a great fight, but this is a plot device as well, isn't it? Like this actually furthers the story, and I didn't feel like I'd read an issue of no words. I felt like I got as much content as if I'd been reading an issue that had panel after panel of language, because you are getting the story and all of the story beats and even like an understanding of the character without having to have words. Yeah, I mean, God, how they conceived of it, and one of the things I was going to say is so when they did Immortal Iron Fist together, it was full script. So Matt Fraction wrote full script. So he's kind of like, yep, this happens, they say this happens, they say that, this happens, they say that. And he said himself, like, he'd never written a Marvel style. And Marvel style is very much about kind of, here's my plot, Mr. Artist, you go and make my plot look pretty, and then we'll put some words in afterwards. But he said the thing that he liked most, or the panels he liked most of the David Aja art when he was doing Immortal Iron Fist was the ones where he'd given him less. So he thought he'd try it on this. And you know, I said about that kind of marriage between the artist and the writer. A lot of those decisions of kind of how those panels were going to be laid out were the penciler, you know, Fractions kind of going, I guess, for this issue, like let's say the sign language issue, he might have said, for all I know, like, I want kind of sign language to be a thing, but you know, David Archer's as much, and I say this like it isn't always the case. I'm ignorant on how to draw it, but I think this is that perfect partnership coming together. And when I say perfect partnership, perfect triplet, because I want Matt Hollinsgsworth to kind of be considered as much a part of this. Although I don't think he was quite so into the creative process of it. I think he was probably then getting the pages and then did the kind of palette stuff afterwards. But yeah, it's really hard to pick out a singular standout issue, because for me there are so many, almost 22 of the buggers.
So we'll do a little brief synopsis of what happens through the story. So it starts with the evil tracksuit mafia coming in to take over and buy up plots of land.
Kind of the old school, you sort of said about that, like foot in a different area. The old school, like villainous slumlord plotline with lots of goons, but modernized by it being an Eastern European style slumlord with goons in tracksuits.
Bro.
Bro.
Um, the first sort of couple of trades is pretty much mostly them. You get Lady Mystique is there with her wonderful mask, which is.
Oh, you mean Madame Mask, yeah?
Oh yeah, Madame Mask. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one.
sorry,
Um,
I was thinking, who's Lady Mystique?
but,
Yes.
foolish.
Sorry.
Madame Mask with her great mask and evilness as a subplot at the beginning. That's one of the ones that we go more about in the first show we did about Hawkeye, where they do a whole sort of issue issue. Confusing myself now. Issues and episodes.
Issues and episodes, yeah. I don't know what's happened to us. We've clearly been watching too much TV, Chris.
Where they go off to a casino on an island. That's the only issue that expands on the color palette a bit more and is more than that sort of 8 to 12 colors.
But I guess because it's playing in so many worlds, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
not only is it a different place, but you have that kind of that opulence that you'd expect to get probably in a supervillain casino-esque situation.
Yeah. Obviously, Kate's there learning her trade and getting more into being a Hawkeye and also a private investigator. We get a wonderful issue, again, which we go about in much more detail in the first episode, which we do about Hawkeye, where they have the car chase, which fucked me. How they, on a still page, make the perfect filmed car chase. Bravo, boys. Bravo.
Yep. As an action centerpiece, it's something to behold, isn't it?
Yes. The main part of the story that runs through all of it is Clint takes over the tenement.
Yeah,
that
it's
he
tenement
is
building,
living
isn't
in.
it? Yeah.
And is basically letting all the people still live there as he protects it. During the story, the Tracksuit Mafia keep trying to take over the tenement. At this point, Kate goes off to LA because they need to split them two up, and she's off to meant to be doing the West Coast Avengers.
They have a kind of I'm going to say a breakup, but like just to be clear, they're not a couple at any point.
Yeah.
But it's kind of I don't know, a kind of friendship breakup more than anything else, isn't it? But yeah, that's kind of why she clears off. She can't deal with him anymore, and he is pushing away someone who's got close to him. But more on that later, I guess, when we pick out our character stuff.
So while she's in LA, she's still being Hawkeye, but also private investigator on the side because she needs to hustle for money.
Yeah.
Which you then get the great gay neighbors who she starts doing random bits for, including.
And do you know what? I think this is kind of a really important part of the story, isn't it? Because I think this makes. She has great moments throughout the series, but I think the fact that they actually followed her story and it wasn't kind of done as a limited series, something I think it truly kind of hammers home. This is Hawkeye the series, and she is Hawkeye.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel like as an ancillary character at that. She feels as important as Clint's story.
Yeah. At this point, you do get some issues that are predominantly just Kate or predominantly Clint, but usually it's one-on-one, 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 whilst they've both got bits going on, and then you'll then get back to them sharing issues. You get the wonderful flower guy with his evil
Yes.
flowers that he's making, lilies.
Yep.
Um, Clint, during this point, is having issues with the ex. Both of them.
3 of them. Well, no, sorry, 2 and current actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
the
sorry,
two
yeah,
exes
yeah.
and the current other
I mean,
half.
I was just jumping ahead to X because it's made quite clear that that ain't going strong and that ain't going long.
Yes. End up having 3 exes, but at this,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
point, his brother comes back,
Yep.
and
Barney?
Barney comes back and is sort of the opposite to Clint in a way that he will just luck out to make a quick buck.
And I think like historically, like he had existed before, and he had existed as kind of it's a superhero fair thing to do, isn't it? Of like, doesn't always have to be a member of the family, but kind of the opposite version of you. So they might have the same power, but they're like the almost the what if this guy was mean or evil. So yeah, there kind of is historical context for the brother to exist.
And Clint does some life saving in the floods out in Jersey. We then get where the end point comes together, and Kate has to come back. The tracksuit mafia and the teardrop killer are about to go full murderous on Clint. At this point, he is completely deaf. And we then get our big end, which is a massive fight for the tenement. So that's the story in a nutshell. But if you want to know what really happens, just read the lot of it. It's fucking awesome.
Well, I mean, one of the things I was particularly interested to ask you, and I guess now we've kind of done like a kind of overview. We'll step back into some of this stuff, but the clown, so the teardrop killer. What did you think of the clown? Because he does become, I guess, kind of the main antagonist from around I want to say kind of issue 10, right the way to the end, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just kind of wondered what you thought of the clown as a villain.
See, at first, he's very much your sort of standard killer for hire. For the first few issues, he doesn't. He just seems to be there in the background, but he clearly becomes more and more involved during it. I do like that for a lot of it, he is a silent antagonist.
Yeah.
He only really sort of finds his voice as such at the back end when he's telling the tracksuit guys where they want him to go and all that. I like the design of the guy as well, which helps because.
Well, that was one of the things I wondered, because I thought when I was reading back through it, I thought, oh, Chris will like him, right up Chris's alley, the character design.
Give me a
Chris would go for a pint with him. I thought to myself,
give me a psychopathic clown-looking fellow.
yeah,
Get him a boy stable.
yeah, get in the van. You'd say. I think there's something in that. We sort of say that silent antagonist. For something that, and I do, I think he's got a great character design, but also, let's be honest, in the wrong hands, on another artist, and another writer, he could easily, I think, be sort of generic, made up villain in the back. But what I found about him, or what I felt about him throughout, is what made him such a good antagonist in this story is that he is just, the menace builds with him.
Yeah.
And often without him having to do anything. I think sometimes the fact that he is just stood there, there are moments where you could almost be critical and kind of go, well, you could have just done what you needed to do there. But he's just a sadistic, menacing bastard who kind of wants his victim to suffer, but not in that cheap way that sometimes you could see in certain things where it's like, I don't know, let's go to like the horror genre and go, he's not just getting someone and getting him in a room and torturing him. He's kind of slowly, methodically making Clint's life worse
Yeah,
until such a point as he wants to actually finish Clint.
there's I think his best sort of couple of best issue for that is the one just before Kate goes to LA, because you just see him in the background of stuff when
Yep.
Kate's on a bike and
Yep.
he's just there.
It's almost, he could have got people.
Yeah,
But he's
It's a-
like,
it's a
now's not the time. It's going to be on my time when I want to do it.
yeah, it's a little bit Michael Myers.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because that's one of the things that I really liked about it. It felt like, and certainly that's the prime example I would use. It felt like it added almost that slasher, but the original kind of slasher horror movies of, here is that menace that is following around, and they are going to get our heroes, etc., etc., etc. And it was, I mean, bearing in mind that he's kind of there from issue 10 to 22, it doesn't feel like he ever outstays his welcome, and it doesn't feel, that menace just feels like it grows rather than ever diminishes. Well, of course, until everything's happy and fluffy at the end and the heroes win, but you know.
But yeah, it's that thing of like, there's obviously I think it's 10 and 11. He's quite big in that way to introduce him and stuff, and then there's like 4 issues when you literally only see him in the background of stuff, and I think there's a couple of panels. He'll have a new gun, or there'll be like one thing that he's doing, but that's it, and you just know, oh, he's coming.
Yeah, it's almost like you as a reader go, I don't know when this is going to land. I don't know when let's go back to the Michael Myers. I don't know when someone's going to actually open the door, and this time he's behind it with a knife.
Yeah.
And effectively, like, you actually get that, don't you? You get the bit where he wasn't actually at the other side of a door. He was at the other side of the wall, but like kind of the door opens, and there he is, and he does the thing that he does. I mean, he ultimately initially costs Clint his hearing, but I guess we'll come back to like the Clint hearing and losing the hearing thing. But you kind of go, the bastard has struck.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a little bit of relief, because you go, oh God, I've just realised I've been tense for 7 issues. But sucks to be you, Clint. Sorry. Yeah, I loved that part of the story, and yeah, as I say, even just from the base visual. But I was kind of hoping you liked him, because I think it's here we go again. So many brilliant things in this, and I think we're very much indoctrinated in most of the Marvel hero stuff of going, who's the villain going to be? Who's the villain twirling their moustache in the background? And, you know, you've got your Thanoses, you've got your Doctor Dooms, you've got like even kind of your Green Goblins and stuff like that at a more street level. But we said earlier about Madame Mask, but you get to see like the Ringmaster, and you get to see Kingpin and in kind of ways, but you never get that massive I am the bad guy, and it doesn't feel like it's to any detriment, because the tracksuit mafia in their ways and the clown alone felt enough that you kind of go, yeah, I buy this. These guys are threats in the right situation, and especially with the tracksuit mafia, you know, like if you are living in a tenement building in New York and you've got loads of people who are lawless to a degree, that's really that. I imagine people do live in those conditions, and it must be horrible for them, and they must be scared. But of course, you don't tend to see that in superhero fare, do you? Because it'll be like, well, but who's the person behind them? It doesn't matter. They're the scary element here, and I thought they'd done a great job with the villainy in this, without it ever having to be
a big bad.
Without ever to having that kind of more traditional superhero or TV fare reveal at the end.
Yeah. Because this is, as we said about the design of Clint and stuff at the beginning, it being the everyman, having real world bad makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Kate and the stuff that she gets into when she's doing her PI stuff. He's just a dickhead that
Yeah, yeah,
is basically a middleman fucking exotic dealer.
yeah,
But of course, that would be the level of actual threat that there'd be there because he has a fucking army of hitmen
yes,
on his payroll. You don't need, yeah, it is. It's one of the things with when we sort of do like Batman's and things like that. We will always go, "Oh, look how great Penguin is," or "Look how great Joker is," but they've
yeah.
got their little goon squad to go through. You don't have to have that, and
No.
this is one of those ones where having a real world, yeah, there are real world gangs out there that
Yeah.
that is a real threat in the real world. You know, it
Well,
doesn't have to be space and
and who's tackling that? You know, who is saving the normal folk from the actual shitty day-to-day crime while the Avengers are off saving the universe? And I think that's what is so, well, I say so smart, but that's what works so well in here because Hawkeye is an Avenger. Hawkeye has, well, I say always been, but predominantly mainly known for his stint in the Avengers, and a large part of, I guess, that the appeal for him was often every man, but from that other side of the coin where you're going, how does the guy who can just shoot arrows go against these big threats? How do they integrate in that? But I love that. I love the fact that you kind of go, and when he's off the clock from that, he doesn't stop, but he's actually helping people who are just trying to live their life, but are prevented to because of low level crime
yeah,
or low to mid level crime. Let's go with yeah, you said it. Everyman again. He is an everyman, and his everyman desire is to help everyone. But I say that tentatively. I guess it's help everyone that deserves helping. You know,
yeah,
you know, it's not out there, but to help everyone, and probably that recognition that it's as important to save one block of flats of people as it was to save the universe.
yeah. This is as important as fucking up Thanos.
Yeah,
Is making sure that the family that live below underneath me have a house to live in, and I'll go look after the kids and watch Christmas cartoons with.
well, and you know, there's. Oh, I guess we're into Clint now. He's a very interesting, complex character in here, whilst being a basic bitch, isn't he? You know, like
Yeah,
for all of his complexity, a lot of his complexities lean into a plethora of insecurities that I guess a lot of people have, all kind of piled into one, but not unrealistically, because I think it's a lot of insecurities that people have together. So like, he does clearly feel inferior. He, you know, he hangs out with gods and all this sort of thing, and then like it kind of then has to go into this world to try and I guess rebalance himself. But you mentioned it earlier about the two X's and the future X. He's rubbish with human beings. Or no, I take that back. He's rubbish with human beings that care about him. And it's almost, again, I go back to inferiority complex of going, because you care about me, I'm going to treat you worse than I want to because I don't want you to care about me because I'm not worth you caring about me. And it manifests in his relationships there, but also, you know, we talk about like when Kate goes, it, you know, he pushes Kate away.
yeah,
You know, they have this great connectivity, they can work together, but he doesn't feel worthy of having Kate in his life, so he pushes Kate away. And you know, like she goes, and I think a bit more reluctantly, but I think she's a bit like, no, you've really done my head in, I'm going. And I want characters like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think I could read, I don't want every superhero to be like this,
yeah,
but I want my superheroes to feel like they are humans. If they are humans, of course.
yeah,
Whereas in this case, Hawkeye is, and it humanizes him so much. But of course, and there are other things, we'll get to kind of the hearing stuff, but this is what makes this series and the journey of him worthwhile, because it's not like at the end of it he's learned. It's not the Christmas Carol. He's not learned everything, but at the very least, certainly on this one, he will still have, like, if Matt Fraction wrote this forever, he will still have that side to him, and it will manifest because you can't stop being who you are. But in this story, he learns that for this purpose, he really needs those people that he's generally pushed away, or in the case of the people that he lives with, the people that he spent time with, but probably as that protector. But then he needed their support as actual support as well, and I think you get a very different Clint at the end, but without it seeming cheesy, schmaltzy or anything like that. But when he's very different, you still know that those issues are still there. He's just managed to recognise them and tackle them for this period of time.
Yeah, is that he grow? It's that whole thing of he grows as a person. He does. He's still broken and
Yeah,
has all
Yeah.
the same traits that he has. But he
fast forward,
he notices
fast forward 3 months down the line, he'd have racked up another X, won't he?
Yeah.
But at least that time it might take him a bit longer because he is growing as a human being. He is trying to overcome those things, but he is a human being. They will probably stay with him, and sometimes he'll be a dick. But you love him. You know, like I said about, like, he pushes everyone away, but you see the reluctance. People don't want to be pushed away because they see that vulnerability in him, and they know deep down inside he's a hero and he wants to save everyone except himself, and then everyone else wants to save him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just so well put together. It's just so beautifully done that and I said 22 issues. This is and of course some of this stuff is playing off history. But to do this much in 22 issues, I think is particularly amazing for me.
Yeah. So should we touch on Kate?
Yes.
So-
This is your first experience of Kate, wasn't it? Like I don't
Yes.
think you've read anything with Kate in before, or probably after, and probably your other experience is the TV show.
Yes, pretty much.
So how's Kate for you?
See, I like Kate. I like her much more in this than on the TV show, where she comes across as a spoilt rich little cunt.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do know there is a bit of truth to that backstory that she is of money and has a good upbringing and such.
She's of money and of villainy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But in this, you tell that everything that she does is because she cares. She cares about Hawkeye. When she cares so much that she has to leave. When she's in LA, she cares about the neighbors. She cares about the weird guy that is he really there, or is he an epiphany in the cat aisle at the supermarket?
Yeah.
Gives her clues and jobs. She sort of cares about the dickhead police chief as well, because she keeps trying to like prove herself to that. And obviously then when she gets back, she cares about the exes as well, because she's even there trying to broker the peace between them and Clint. She's such a nice person, and it's just shit wants you just want shit to work for her, but she's clumsy. This is the thing that this shit seems to just go wrong for her. However much she tries.
I was trying to kind of think about like what my best description of her is, and my best description come back to, and I don't think this is super smart or anything, I'm sure this was kind of the consideration, is she's a Hawkeye.
Yeah.
She is Clint, but without the arsehole side of Clint. But she still has, like, I mean, she has character foibles, and hers is probably the other side of that coin, isn't it? By maybe caring too much, and as you say, like backstory wise, there's some entitlement there, and like she has sarcasm, but she will, in a Hawkeye-esque fashion, bumble into or the bad situation, and she's brilliant in the interactions, and as you say, she interacts with lots of people, and you get to see it. But my favourite interactions are her and Clint. Like I could, I can say I could read about them till the end of time. I mean, probably I couldn't because there's only so much you could do. But I love them when they're together because you kind of, I mean, almost like she's the kid, and I know she's not a kid, but she's the kid who has to be the grown up and the parent in this.
Yes.
Whilst not wanting to be a grown up and be a parent, she also kind of wants to. She's trying to get into the hero game. She's been in it for a while, but she's trying to kind of establish that and wants to do good in things. But she, certainly for the first part of the series, is kind of forced into this dilemma of going, oh God, like he's a mess at the moment. Yeah, I've got to make sure he's all right. And then she does venture out, and things don't necessarily go brilliantly for it. Don't go terribly, but don't go brilliantly. And I felt like kind of that was really helpful to her as a character because, yeah, she's probably not so much in the mess that Clint is psychologically or where he is in his life. But I think that helps to kind of go, well, yeah, well, okay, sometimes things don't necessarily go as planned. It might work out in the end, but, like life isn't as easy. And, talking about this as a piece of superhero storytelling, and, going back to what I said about Matt Fraction wanting this to be kind of a series where it's the normal person's eyes into this world. I think with Kate, you get to see the same thing but through a different set of eyes, and you get to see that it is experienced slightly different depending on who it is. And I think it's kind of really important to go, she learns that heroism, probably her ultimate journey is that heroism won't always be I go back to saving the universe. It is really important to make sure that those people around you are right, and to try and let's be a bit twee about it, make the world a better place, one arrow at a time, one step at a time, whatever terminology you kind of want to use, and taking care of those people around you. And sometimes that is taking care of them when they're not at their best, when they are in let's go with like a dark place sort of psychologically. And then of course we get into kind of sort of physical impairment that happens to Clint later on. But I guess it's not all glitz and glamour. It's not all pretty frocks and going to the casino. It is also about I'm going to say grim and gritty, but not in the Dark Knight, Batman or Daredevil thing, but the everyman thing. Life is there and people are living it, and she's there to kind of twig that it helps. But yeah, the two of them together, what an absolute dream. And I don't want to rattle on the TV show too much. I think we made it clear in the last episode how we feel about the TV show. And I'll be honest, for all of the other gubs that's in it, and there are a lot I would complain about, it's and I know people really like Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop. This is Kate Bishop. That isn't.
Yeah.
What she does is fine, but that's not Kate Bishop. This is Kate Bishop, and it hurts me to think that lots of people now will think of Kate Bishop as what they saw in the Hawkeye TV show and not get this Kate Bishop. However, for context, there are many other stories before this and after this, although I think some of them are quite good after this, that also Kate Bishop isn't this Kate Bishop. But, that's kind of what you have to buy into sometime with the comics, is certain creators will do things that you don't like so much, or portray the characters in a way that you don't necessarily want to see them portrayed.
Yes. Should we go back on your favourite now? Lucky.
Oh, I do. I love him. I love him. I mean, it's an easy win, isn't it? It's a dog, but again, you just fall in love with Lucky. You fall in love with him from that first storyline, because Clint falls in love with him, and you're there with Clint. But all the way through the series, it's just amazing whenever he's on panel, because he does the things that a dog does. And he makes you love him. Yeah. And as you said, some of the art choices to really kind of push that home, like the dog thought bubbles of what a dog thinks a human is saying to him, and what a dog is thinking when a human thinks a dog's thinking something else is it's beautiful. Keep saying every man, and we'll keep saying every man. But let's be honest, it's things like this that ground this series. It grounds this series into real world. you know, I'm not saying everyone's a dog owner and everyone's a dog lover, but like if you've had a pet any time in your life, I think this grounds this to make it resonate with you of kind of going, oh, this is what my dog did, this is what my cat did, this is whatever. But you know, it really pulls you in.
Yeah. It said from the minute you first see Lucky, and you know, it's that tragic of it's been hit. Clint, being the good guy, takes it to a vet
Yeah,
and ends up going, "It's a stray. It's not my dog. It's just, no, it's not my. Oh, for fuck's sake! I'll take the dog."
yeah. but even that, behind the eyes, you go, you were never not going to take the dog. You were lying to yourself. Again, because you were trying to push things away that you love. You know, I said about like kind of really hard to pick a favorite issue because there's so many good ones. I think it's issue 11. In fact, bear with us 1 second. I'm just going to check. I think it's issue 11 which is the Lucky the Pizza Dog issue, or like the one that kind of primary does it. Yeah. Like. So it's great. It's fantastic. It also won an award. It won an Eisner Award for best single issue of the year that it came out. And I think there are other issues within this series that are equally as good and equally could have been awarded. But of course, you know, if you're looking at a year, but yeah, and that's this kind of level of quality. And God, like if you said to a lot of people, the best single issue now, albeit like by a panel's choice, but the best single issue of a year was a superhero story that focused mainly on a dog.
Yeah,
And people will probably go, "What is it? A dog with powers?" And you go, "No, it's just a dog."
yeah.
And you kind of follow his part of the story, yeah. And just I want Lucky. That's why I don't have a dog, because no dog will ever match up to Lucky the Pizza Dog for me.
Sort of going with the animal thing, I know that you waxed lyrical about the Christmas
Oh, I love it.
friend, super friend pets
Yeah.
issue, but that's a TV show waiting to happen. That is a 15-minute special,
And you know, like it moves the story forward in a very interesting way, I think. But also, you know, that allows it to we said about like the art being predominantly David Archer, but it allows them to bring a new art style in to kind of mix it up a little bit. But also, you know, it allows it to do a load of comic book nods and things. You know, like it allows them to, while in the context of that story, lean into, let's say, some of the other characters that maybe the distinguished competition have, and kind of give nods to them and things like that. God, it's just this series is just issue after issue of absolute baller storytelling, isn't it?
it is a very, very, very good run. As a whole, I don't think there is a bad issue in the 22.
Well, and for historical context, Hawkeye had it had been a plot point about having hearing issues, and I want to say like kind of right the way back from the beginning, but I don't actually necessarily think it's right at the beginning, but not too far into it. And Hawkeye had been killed pre this and resurrected. Like it was all kind of in some of the big stories, and when he come back with none of that. And I think it was like an important step to kind of touch on that and reintroduce that extra fallibility to him. And when we talk about issues, how great they are, I think the moment that was probably the most impactful for me throughout this story and the most gut punching is when they show you how he lost his hearing before, and you find out it's from domestic abuse, and this kind of all comes into the story with him and his brother. And his brother had oft been just portrayed as you say, the evil side of the coin. Oh, there's the bad brother and things like that.
Yeah.
But you get this build up of the relationship between it, and don't get me wrong, he's still a shit, like, because human beings are human beings. We come back to that every man eye again, but you do actually get to see why he's a shit. You get to see probably a lot of the reasons why Clint has pushes away people that get close to him. and it's done in, I want to say harrowing, like, not that it's so physically, it's not like, yo, can't wait to get to the abuse issue. It's not like that. It's told in such a sensible, sensitive way that you kind of go, I get it, and I'm so glad I didn't have to experience that. But not only does it give context for how he is, how his brother is, but it gives so much context for their relationship, and as I say, smart storytelling, because it takes you from one part of the story to the next part of the story, but by doing something that happened in the past. And it is the part of the series where, when I think about the series, don't get me wrong, my first thought's Lucky the Pizza Dog. It's always going to be, but I think of that moment and I kind of go, wow, like, in poor storytelling hands, that could come across so trite and so contrived, but it just makes so much sense. And it's a real punch, but it's a real punch where you kind of go, oh, I get it. And I've got a brother, love my brother. Not saying we talk all the time, because I don't, I'm rubbish. But I think often when I see a brother relationship told so well, and yeah, for me, for the context, it was always, oh, there's the guy who looks a bit like Hawkeye, who's the evil Hawkeye. And all of a sudden now, no, like, there's two brothers who have got a really believable and interesting relationship between them.
Yeah, and it's that thing of having a difficult family shit, because 99% of people don't have the happy, everything's amazing,
Yeah,
family relationship, which telly would make you believe it is.
yeah.
There is always going to be some sort of.
I was going to say that TV Family, but the one that popped into my head was the Cosbys, and I thought, well, that didn't turn out too well, did it?
It puts the pills in the pudding pop.
Yeah. That was that's not the that's not the ideal TV family that anyone should ever think of, is it?
So yeah, this is one of those that I think people really do need to read.
Yeah.
With it only being 22 story, it's not one of these where I say, "Oh, just read X issues or trade 1 to 3." It drops off or something like that. The whole thing, I read the original trade.
Yeah.
Back ages ago when we did the first show, because
that was kind of my toe in the water, wasn't it? Because we knew the TV show was coming out, and I knew I loved it, so I kind of went, "Oh, try this," hoping that you would like it.
Yeah, it was one of those. That was pre the app and all that being there, so it was just like, it was I think it was about £7 or £8, so I picked it up, and then it was always on my list to get back to. And when we got to the apps, and it was obviously, I did the first thing was all of the Batmans.
We often talk about the apps, and they are brilliant, aren't they? But it's almost a bit like whatever your service of choice, Netflix, Amazon, Disney. There are times where you sit there and go, "Oh my god, there's so much choice, I can't pick one." Or the other side of the coin, where you go everything all at once and actually forget about something you really wanted to come back to.
But as soon as I started this, I made myself do a trade, then read something else, then come back for the next one, because I didn't want to do it all in one hit, because I was enjoying it so much.
You know what I said to you earlier, and no similarities in stories, but when I read that first trade of the Department of Truth the other night, and I think that is 22 issues, or there's 22 issues so far, and I think they're on a bit of a hiatus. My first thought was, go on to, I'm going to say Comixology, not that they exist anymore, but go into Comixology and buy every issue and read it all now. And I went, no, calm down, read some other stuff, and then you'll enjoy it so much more when you come back to it. So yeah, I do kind of get that mentality of sometimes you want to almost drip feed it to yourself because you don't want it to be over too quickly.
Yeah, but it is one of the things that I would say to anyone that has any interest in comics.
Yeah,
this is a must-read series.
When we talked about the TV show, like, even for people who've just watched the TV show, oh, read this. Like, and you know, I don't like the TV show, but if you like the TV show, God, I can only imagine how much you'd like this. Like, I think it really would kind of, and I'm not just saying like flesh out the story. I think it fundamentally changes, or it doesn't change the story. It was the original, but fundamentally tells the story in a much more interesting way. And for anyone who's watching who liked Kate Bishop, I think you'll love Kate Bishop so much more reading this than what you've seen of Kate Bishop so far. Like, it's a must read, I think. Will everyone love it? No, I think for some people, the art style, as beautiful as it is, and as much as we love it, I think depending on where you are with like your comic reading experience or just what you like, I think it could be jarring for people. We've waxed lyrical about that removal of the universe stakes and the big bad and all that. And I could see some people struggling with that because they're used to that or they like that. But I hope for a lot of people it does what it did to me, who was so used to and don't get me wrong, when I got into this, I had been reading a lot more of the indie stuff, but this made me go, oh man, I love superhero comics, because I can then read Hulk, but I like a more generic Hulk one where he smashes some shit. But people write and make this stuff as well, and this stuff is really special to me because I think it goes to show. We've talked about this on so many other things. Like horror is one of my big ones of going. Horror is its best is when it is telling you a story about something that isn't anything to do with horror, but it's still scary and there's all those horror tropes there. Yeah. And this kind of advertises that this can be done in superhero comics, not just comics, but superhero comics. I think it's a masterpiece. I really do. Like, it's hard because, we said earlier about the list of single issues. Well, the list of things that are bloody brilliant comics are really long as well. And, when you sort of go, oh yeah, for me, it'd be like number 72 in my all-time top list. Someone might go, well, that sounds low. And you go, there's a million comics out there. Yeah. But yeah, I think the best descriptor I can give it is I do genuinely think this is a masterpiece of storytelling, connectivity between what the writer wants to achieve and what the artist does in unison to get us there. I think it's a great character piece for multiple characters, and even some of the side characters get enough time for you to go, I mean, shit, I'd read a 50-issue series just about that block of flats. Yeah. I really would. And so many of these parts, and again, that's subverting what a lot of superhero comics are presented as, but not so much so that it moves away from all the tropes. I just think it's absolutely wonderful.
Yes. So if you have access to it,
sorry, and very, very quickly before I move on, I forgot to say, and has the greatest car chase I think I've ever seen, and it's drawn on a piece of paper.
Yes. So yeah, if you have read it, let us know what you think. If you haven't read it, do yourself over.
Buy it, read it. Buy it, read it. My new catchphrase. Buy it, read it.
It's all there on Marvel.
Yeah. You won't regret it. You might not love it, although I think a lot will, but you won't regret it. So I think it's done to such a good standard that at the very least, even if you say it's not for me, I think you'll walk away and going, but it was a bloody good bit of writing and art combined.
So next time we'll be back, and it is that time of the month for news and new things.
Oh, I'm quite looking forward to this one as well, because I had a little sneaky peek at some of the solicits, and there's some things that I'm quite excitable about. I didn't look at too many. Don't shake your head. I opened them up to make sure that they were the next month's solicits.
Not ones and a couple of things already.
A couple of things jumped out straight away. I realised everything I just said sounded like I was a child who had started to open their Christmas presents too early and said I was just checking that they were our presents.
Can't I tell what you're like? As always, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all the YouTubey things, and we'll be back.
Before we go, also, and I think we said it before, and I might start doing some stuff on Twitter poll, but bearing in mind we might be coming to the end of a long adventure soon. Any particular storylines or anything like that anyone out there would like us to read and cover, drop them in the comments, because we might have a huge void to fill in the near future.
Oh no, we've still got our big boy to go through of Sandman.
Oh yeah, but we're doing that anyway. But
Yeah.
I'm just thinking something to kind of to fill the bat shaped void that might be there in our reading in the near future.
Yes. So, as always, thank you for watching. And until next time, goodbye.